look at this company and where we are, again, there was no roadmap. There was nothing that says that we want to have 10 restaurants. I mean, every step of the way, we thought we were done. We're like, we made it to 2 restaurants. We're done. My mom said no more after 3. And then we're sitting here and we laugh and we're together. And it was from hard work that got us here. But, it was a lot of that trust that just saying, if I could look back and just take the pressure off myself. I mean, I was someone that just felt like I had to prove it and that I had to fight for it. And it wasn't that. It was just, hey, you are where you're supposed to be. Enjoy the ride. Be intentional in your work hard.
Created on purpose and for purpose.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Daron Early Wine Podcast. Daron Early Wine, your host here. And if you watch the podcast, you're going, where the heck is Daron sitting, right? If you listen to the podcast, nothing is different. You're like, it sounds like it always sounds. But for you YouTube subscribers, folks that are watching it, we had to change studios. The space we had, the office space we had, the company that allows us to use some space, they're changing their office. They're moving. And so we had to tear down the studio, and the creative, amazing PJ Tao that does all of our email marketing and a lot of different design and work with us came over to my house, and we put this together this week. So hope you enjoy it. This will be the new podcast studio for at least a couple months, and we'll figure out where we go from there. So looks a little different, same content, and hopefully the same impact on your life. And we're starting a new kind of series right now with the podcast that I'm excited about, and looking at how do we see our faith and our work come together. The idea of seeing mission in the marketplace. A lot of times we struggle to know, okay, I've got this personal faith, if you will, that term is popular. And then I've got my life where I have my job and stuff, and I'm not sure where exactly I can say stuff there, not say stuff. How do I do that? And then you take that and probably multiply it about 10x if you're actually running a business or a company. Do I have to hide my faith? Can I actually lead with it? Can it be something that actually shapes culture within our company? And what we're going to do is bring on some guests for this conversation that are answering that question and making a really, really powerful impact. And so I'm excited to kick it off and welcome Alec Wolf to the podcast today. Alec is the son of Scott and Nyla Wolf, who run the Wolfpack Restaurant Group. They've got about 10 restaurants, I think it is, around the Indianapolis area, and they are our longest running pub theology partner. We've been partnering with them for, I think, 12, 13 years now. And Alec, I'm so stoked to have you on the podcast. The business you guys have built, the family you guys are, there's going to be a lot of just golden nuggets of content from this conversation. So welcome to the podcast, Alec.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Alec Wolf. I'm with Wolfpack Restaurant Group, formerly Wolfie's Grill. We've kind of grown our legs a little bit. We have the Italian House, Nyla's, Swanky Mule, Broken Barrel, Boomerangs. We're all over the place. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, Alec, talk a little bit about this. You guys are the Wolfpack, right? It's your mom, your dad, your sister. And, you talk to a lot of second generation, if you will, business leaders, and there's definitely like a thought of like, and I struggled with this myself. My dad was a pastor, and I'm like, I'm not freaking being a pastor, I still struggle with that. And and for you, it's been interesting because you guys work together. I'm sure there's ups and downs, and you fight like dogs, like regular families do sometimes. But you guys work together in such a beautiful way, running the restaurants. But we go back and talk to 13-year-old Alec. Is he drawing pictures in his journal about, flipping burgers and running restaurants? I mean, is this what you always dreamed your life would be?
No, not at all. Again, my parents have always been the entrepreneurs. They are the ones actually that should probably be on this podcast, but they're away on a little bit of a vacation. But, they've left the hands to me. They're out, they're enjoying their time. So they feel they're at a place in the company that they can pass it on to their kids, my sister and I, Ainsley. But essentially, no, I was not that. My parents, again, at a young age, they had farmers markets. My mom had a little shop called Hillsdale. After that, she opened up Nyla's. So after school in elementary, I'd come home. I'd help unload pumpkins. We would get dirty. And it was just kind of this thing that it just always felt like I was in the family business from the age of, relatively 6 on. And so I just grew up in it. And so, no, I did not want to do it. I wanted to get away from it. I was always embedded in it, and I just always dreamt of something larger and greater. And my natural abilities, didn't seem to fit into the industry. But over time, I've learned that, I went to college. I tried to escape it, failed and fell flat on my face. And, my parents were right there to help pick me back up. But in that time, everything that I learned along the way, I did a little culinary. I did a little a graphic artist. I just couldn't find myself and I didn't know where I fit in, but I had always been in the industry and I knew it well. And I just, for some reason, you kind of, as a young kid, you just want to prove that you can eat this world up on your own. And
Sure, yeah.
my faith wasn't where it was. And so I kind of, after coming back and just humbling myself and learning that, hey, this is where I need to be, I need to start from scratch and I need to prove to everybody at the time. What I felt like I had to prove to everybody was that I'm capable. I'm the owner's son. I've got to figure this out. I've got to prove to everybody that it's not based on my merit or my name. It's based on my work. And, but like I said, at a young kid, I didn't picture it, but now that I'm here, everything that I learned along the journey, it's interesting how God has a plan, but we work really well in tandem as a family.
What were some of your aspirations? I mean, you said you have definitely creative abilities, artistic. I mean, what is that? What you wanted to do? Be an artist in some ways, or what that look like?
We've talked about that. Yeah, I wanted to be an illustrator. I love to draw. I excelled really quickly in that sphere, and whether it's fashion, whether it's interior design, whether it be art, that's just where I was drawn. And so those passions, I still get to use on the daily, and I never thought myself as somebody that in this business would have that. You think burgers and beers and fries and you're cooking on the day. But as my role evolved and just that leadership, I'm a problem solver in my heart. I love to problem solve. And there is not enough. I mean, there's enough problems in the restaurant industry that can be fixed. But aside from that, like my traits of just loving people well and then passion for, people, but the industry itself, there's always interior design. I help with the menus. I get to design them all. I get to put some menu items on the menu, and just those abilities are always there in that creative mindset. And so I'm never not stimulated. There's always something to be worked on. And it's interesting how what I naturally, are passionate about have just flown into this industry. And I think that's a telltale sign of anybody that, whatever you're doing at that moment in time, whether it be, a server, a bartender, or cook, or, along that journey, there was always something that kept me into this industry. And I'm so thankful that I'm still here today. So,
yeah. One thing that I think is interesting, Alec, I talk about this often, is sometimes when we're on this journey of really discovering, who God created us to be. I mean, I, believe, and we say it every podcast here, that, that we're all created on purpose and for a purpose. But that's a process for most of us. I think for all of us, right? Not many of us, are born and go, this is it. And even if we think this is it, whatever it is, in third, fourth grade, I mean, that was my story. Third grade, I'm like, this is it. I'm going to be a drummer, and everything was poured into that. And that's not, I mean, I still play drums, but that's not what I do. But it's along the journey that sometimes I think when we're in those wilderness type places, man, I this is not where I want to be. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. It feels like maybe that all that's wasted. And I've got these abilities, I've got these aspirations, I've got these things that, of how I want to see it happen. And I know best how to make this work. And then when I've, through my lived experience, and there's tons of Bible stories that would hit this up as well. And it sounds like what you're sharing, it's like, as you begin to trust God and step into the opportunities He was bringing into the restaurant, world with your parents, you realized, well, none of these gifts were wasted. It was just the context of them I didn't understand, Correct. And I love to see that. And, if somebody's maybe listening right now and they're like, man, I'm in that wilderness place. I've got ideas and visions, and this is what I think how my gifts will be used best in this industry or working with this company or whatever it may be. I guess what would be a word of encouragement you would give them to say, hey, if you're frustrated right now, don't give up, or open up your imagination to the opportunities that God might bring. Like what's maybe a word of encouragement? Maybe you would have actually, if you could go back and talk to like 22, 21-year-old Alec, and maybe somebody that's in that spot, what was something maybe you'd say that would encourage them?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that God has you exactly where He wants you to be, and in that moment, you just gotta, for us, when we look at this company and where we are, again, there was no roadmap. There was nothing that says that we want to have 10 restaurants. I mean, every step of the way we thought we were done. We're like, we made it to 2 restaurants. We're done. My mom said no more after 3. And then we're sitting here and we laugh and we're together. And it was from hard work that got us here. But, it was a lot of that trust, that just saying, if I could look back and just take the pressure off myself. I mean, I was
Wow.
someone that just felt like I had to prove it and that I had to fight for it. And it wasn't that. It was just, hey, you are where you're supposed to be. Enjoy the ride. Be intentional in your work hard in your work. I mean, this is a gift from God that we've even, had these buildings. I mean, to some of that, I'd like to touch on, and just the issue that, when we were small and we failed more than we succeeded before we got to where we are. And so it was just that journey of finding out who we are. And I always say, you can't run this business without Scott or without Nyla. And in that aspect, that my dad, his traits are, he's results driven. He is hungry for, getting the numbers in order, and he cares about people, but in the sense that I've got to run a company and do them well, that if this company fails, there's a lot of people's lives on the line. So he's looking at that day-to-day stuff. Then you got my mom, who could care less about the numbers, could care less about, making a dime. And she just wants to love on people. And she just wants to make sure that they've been heard, that they've been appreciated. And she'll take $20 when we're not making money and put it in their pocket. I mean, she did that from time and time again. And so, from that, you had two great people that just, they had intentions to do well in this environment, each to their own passions, each to their own success. And then we've kind of come up as the second generation and added to that pool. And then our employees behind us each have their own unique traits. And so whether you're a server, bartender, dishwasher, we're all adding to it. And so for that person that's out there that's just looking for that encouragement, it's like, God has you here. He's got you where you are. Take it as it is. Look at the things that you bring great into this world and just pour into it. And I think out of that, fruit will be made.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Alec, in this episode, in this series, we're talking about how you bring, faith and in the marketplace and, work together. And, I know some people are under the belief, we got to build a huge wall between those, you know what I mean? Like, I have got my faith over here and then my business is over here, and they shouldn't intermingle. And I think people have a fear of, like, listen, I don't want to be, beating people over the head with the Bible. We're here to do fill in the blank, right, of what the business is. And that would be easy for you guys to say, like, listen, we're making food, right? We're slinging beers and brews, like, in burgers, and, like, what are we going to talk about? Jesus over here with a side of tater tots, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then, there probably are some businesses maybe where maybe they get it flip-flopped a little the other way. They're like, hey, we're just here to tell people about Jesus, and, if our business sucks, that's what it is. Like, that doesn't work, right? Yeah. But you guys have been able to find a balance of that where, excellence is a big quality when you look at the Wolfies brand. But this whole time, and you guys have been the longest running pub theology partner that we've had, as far as the pub theology ministry that we run to reach people out in the everyday spaces and places of life, and bars and restaurants have been that location that we've done. And you guys, we've been partnering with you now for almost 13 years. And I've watched your parents and I've watched you and Ainsley be, able to balance that, to say, hey, you know what? If we're going to pour our heart and soul into what we do every day we're in here, you can't get my heart and soul, as a wolf without there being Jesus, through that. Yeah. Talk to us about that. How do you guys approach that, to say, hey, we're going to run an excellent business. We're not going to shove this down your throat, but we are who we are. How have you seen your parents do that? How have you stepped into that? Kind of speak to that arena.
For sure. So, my parents, they're the pioneers with this. They're the ones that stepped out, and they knew from an early age, their foundation was built on Jesus Christ. And so they knew that with doors opening, I mean, a lot of times it was, there was an explanation, but doors were opening and we were given opportunities, and Wolfie's Noblesville was one of those opportunities. And so, you take those with a leap of faith, with that risk. And as it kind of comes back, you got to give credit where credit's due. And so my parents knew that, and they knew that at some point that this has to be for something bigger than just feeding people in the food sense. It was feeding people's souls as well. And they knew that, that's why we're here on earth. And we believe that as followers of Christ. And so I was a young kid, I didn't understand it. I'm 18, 19, and I'm managing early on. And I remember pub theology coming in, and I would cringe, Daron. 100% I would be like, okay, how many regulars am I going to have to explain this to? Yeah. That there's that this is happening behind them as they're, slamming beers, Budweiser Dave or whoever, and it was like, all right. And I would have to put the fire out. But my parents were passionate that, hey, we want to do something more. And
Hmm.
it wasn't just pub theology. It was everyday life. I mean, it was really like we would have a slew of people. The restaurant industry is so unique in that it brings all walks of life.
Yeah.
It could bring the teacher that's just trying to look for a little extra income. It could bring the kid that just has no other place to go. And, we would just have a slew. It was almost like, where I picture kind of how Jesus walked, and there was just people all abound looking for more.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad, and they just had their faith, and they knew that was the answer. And so I remember a quick story, we had this party bus, and this party bus smeared our face on it. It was my mom, my dad, my sister were clinging beers. The whole design of this party bus was just to add people, to take them to Colts games, do some fun things with it. But my mom saw it as an opportunity to say, you know what? We've got this great party bus. We've got a bunch of people that work for us that don't know who Jesus Christ is. I'm going to take them to church. And so she shows up on Sunday. Half these kids are hungover from Saturday night. We load up in this van and we go to church. The minute we unload, these kids are lighting up their cigarettes. They look nervous. And my mom was unbashful. And again, there wasn't a roadmap to say, hey, we're going to sit down, we're going to institute these traits into our culture that are going to kind of highlight Jesus. It was just that he was honest. I mean, he was honest from the minute we opened these businesses, and they represented it so well, and I can't take credit for that. I think in the last of the 5 years that my faith has really found its place, that's when I felt comfortable doing it. But they have always done this. Pub theology, restaurant industry, Bible study they started. You've heard a little bit about that. But really, it's just having that intention nature that, you know what, this is all God's at the end of the day. The money we earn, the business that's been given to us, and we're just trying to give a percentage of that back to raise people up well.
Yeah. I love it, Alec. Yeah, I'm a little offended still. I never got a chance to get on the party bus. I remember when it happened. I heard how legendary it was. I've never been on it. No, what I love about that, Alec, and getting to be, kind of riding, in the back seat, if you will, to watch some of these experiments that you guys have done. I love a couple things about it that I want to point out and encourage, a listener or a viewer is these all weren't massive successes. Right. And some of them don't even function anymore as far as, outreach efforts, if you will call them those.
Yeah.
But they were creative ideas that your parents and you guys brought to say, okay, like you said, God's given us these opportunities, given us this platform, like the mission of Christ, right? To make disciples, to love people, to see his faith and hope and love change lives. Like, this has to be the true, heartbeat of what we do. So, God, what are some creative ideas? What are the resources we have, and how could we, open that up to you? And they're not all successes. They're not all failures. They've done great things. But I just want, to encourage somebody to open yourself up to the creativity of God, of the ideas. Okay, God, if I'm not just here to make money, if I'm not just here to manufacture, soap, if I'm not just here, to be an accountant, or whatever it may be, there's something greater than that, above and beyond. And what do I have, in my hands, if you will, that you could use? And your parents could have been like, oh, well, we got this party bus. And, a more conservative Christian would be like, well, that's obviously not going to happen. There's beer in there, right? And, that's why I love partnering with your parents. We don't have that philosophy. But some people would say you can't use that. Well, yeah, you can. They've done so many things that they've said, you know what, God, we're just going to give this to you. And I think there could be some of this, and it says, well, I'm a freaking accountant. How can God use that? It's like, well, have you asked him? And are you open to take a risk? And guess what? Your first opportunity at that risk to say, I'm going to see if I can't take what I do best and what I have resource-wise professionally and say, God, what do you want to do with this? And guess what? It might fail, but that's not it, that you're going to learn something from that failure and keep moving on. And it's been so cool to watch you guys do that, to be able to be a part of what that looks like. And I'm excited about whatever the next idea we come up with, you know what I mean? To grow together and make that happen. And Alec, what I want to do real quick is we usually take a quick commercial break. So we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I want to talk about a super bold move that you guys made as a business that literally had the potential to lose your company millions of dollars, and
Yep.
you, since God was telling you to do it, and you guys took a big risk, and I want to talk about that decision and maybe what the impact has been when we come back from this commercial break. We'll be right back. A quick commercial break here on the podcast. I want to tell you a story about a conversation I had a couple weeks ago with a faithful podcast listener like yourself. We started talking about spiritual DNA, the online course that I've created that helps you discover who you were born to be. And I said, hey, have you gone through spiritual DNA yet? And I'm assuming they listen to the podcast, like, hasn't everyone gone through spiritual DNA? They said, you know what? No, I haven't. I said, well, why not? They said, I haven't gotten around to it yet. But I really want to discover who God's created me to be. So if that's you, today's your day. Here's what you need to do. I need you to go to daronearlewine.com/spiritual DNA. That's where you can get the course, and I want to give you a discount because you're part of the podcast family. So once you go to buy the course, go to the promo code and use promo code podcast. You're going to get 20% off the course today. All right? That's your next step. Do it. daronearlewine.com/spiritual DNA. Use promo code podcast and start your journey today to discover who you were born to be. All right, let's get back to the episode. Hey, welcome back. So stoked that you're here and didn't, go to another podcast or do something else during our commercial break. We want to put those resources and opportunities for you to know some more of the things that we offer here at Blackbird Mission and daronearlewine.com, and hopefully you can be a part of those things. Alec, before we went to the commercial, I talked about 3 years ago, you guys as a family began God nudging you to make a major decision, and there was thoughts about how it impacted people. There was thoughts about how it was going to impact the bottom line. And it was a huge risk. And tell us about this decision, and let's talk about what the impact's been.
Sure. So the decision that Daron's referring to is we closed all of our restaurants on Sunday. It's biblically, it's a day of rest. It's a Sabbath day. And Wolfie's, as you know, it was open from 11 a.m. to 12 midnight, 7 days a week. We had brunch for a while. I mean, we were running ourselves ragged. And our family, as the company grew, we could free ourselves a little bit more. And we would take that time to go to church. Obviously, that's a foundation standpoint. My parents would drag me early on. And then I started to, I'm dragging my kids on. But the sense was, we're at this point and we had this freedom in our life that we could take Sundays off as a family, but our restaurants were still open. That we're still asking people to go in to work on that day. And we invited them to church, but then we're putting them on the schedule at the same time. And so there was this element of, my mom and I would always talk about this, like, what if we could close on Sundays way prior to the opportunity that it came to when it did. But obviously COVID, we've talked about, and just the sense of there was a culture change. There was something that was more needed. I think people at that point in time were really looking for not just a financial income. It wasn't a race to see who can make the most money. It was a quality of life assurance. It's like, I'm going to make these decisions now. And we thought the same thing. We said, what can we do as a company to really offset this change in scenery? And it was apparent. I mean, it jumped out in front of my mom and I, and my dad being that results driven guy, he challenged the status quo, and he's like, do you know what this is going to cost us? And I mean, he looked at it from the real business sense. He had to. Someone
absolutely
had to have that balance. And so while my mom and I might be more of the passionate, my sister was, very much ingrained, and the four of us really came together and we prayed about it. And we just, what can we do? And Lord, you're going to have to make this work. And it was timing and the presence. And we decided to close on Sundays. Now, that did have a tremendous impact on us financially. I mean, you got 2 waterfront locations, tons of boats, we're coming out of COVID. Everyone wants to get out, and you've got a day that you just said, we're not going to do it. And boy, the hate emails we received, the Yelp reviews that we had to defend ourselves. And, we never really did it in the sense of we did this for faith. We said, this is a decision we made. And our team, I'll tell you, from that moment in time, they didn't know what they didn't have, and now that we've given them this day, there's no quick, hey, call in, like, hey, we need you, we're Sundays were the hardest day to staff. It was the most day people wanted off. And so you were running with a team that was a little bit more of a, you're trying to take care of your good ones. You want to have them the day off. So it was always a mishmash day where you would get called in and people would have to, sacrifice time with their family to be a part of this environment that we created. And so by giving that up, we've seen less turnover as a company. People are hanging on. It's actually a really great trait to say, hey, we're closed on Sundays. You can spend that time with your family. You can go to church if you like, if that's your gig. But people really poured into this idea. And over time, the ones that worked on Sunday and said, I need this financially, they've come back to us and said, you know what? I didn't know what it felt like to have a day off like this on a Sunday, with uninhibited by anything. So, but then the financial sense, something I really want to give credit to God for, over the course of that 3-year journey that we are today, not only have we exceeded those sales, we've done so without Sunday. And so our customer pool, I got to give credit to those people that dine with us. They've continued to come back. They've maneuvered around our decisions. Some people know our foundation. Some people don't. But we've been able to still exceed those sales without too big, without that one day. And so, I can't say this goes for everybody, but for us, it was just a quick decision that had great potential, and it was a lot of risk. I mean, again, risk has always been at the core of my parents, and I got to give them credit for the journey they are for just opening the restaurants, the risk of putting their faith in it, and then again taking that risk to take Sundays off. And I think at the end of the day, God's opened doors for us, and we're just trying to repay that favor and opening doors for Him.
I love it, Alec. And the thing is, I mean, it's like, when God's like, hey, I actually set up the world the way it's best for you, right? And, I took a day off. Like I took I created the world, and I took the 7th day off. Like I took a day off of rest. And that's, this idea of biblically of the Sabbath, of taking a day off and finding a rhythm where you actually understand that you're not a human doer, right? You're a human being, and we need to, and I think I love it when we find ways to go, okay, how do I actually practically allow for the way God wants the world to work, and the way He created it to work within our business? And all of a sudden, what does He do? He shows up and goes, yeah, that, like I told you, that's how it works. So I'll just, I can take care of the business when I actually, show you guys how to do it. And I love that you guys put your people, over profit in that situation. You know what I mean? And it was a biblically based decision, but a lot of it, of what I'm hearing you say, was also thinking about how do we just practically love our people? Like, in you know what? And somebody could have made the argument, I'm sure, like you said, some people did, well, you can love me by letting me work on Sunday to make some more money. Yeah. Right. But realizing, well, you know what? There's actually something more important in your life than just money, And I love the courage that you guys brought into that decision. And some people may say, well, my business doesn't have that doesn't contextually make sense for me. Well, it may not, but there's probably something else that you can begin asking God, what is something we can do, in my company? And like you said, you guys didn't march out and be like, hey, let me quote this scripture for you guys. This is the deal. And right. Like you did it in a way that made it palatable to the environment, but also created a bridge for deeper conversations with people, and created environments where they could begin to take care of their soul if they're ready to be on that journey, which I think is massive. One thing I want to talk about as well, Alec, is when we look at bringing faith into things. I remember there was a choir director at my college, and I wasn't in the choir, but I would hear him say this because sometimes I would play drums for things for him, and he would get mad when the choir would screw something up, and he would yell at them, and he would say, "Holy shoddy is still shoddy." And I always loved that because it was like his point of like, I don't care if you pray for this, bless this, anoint this song. Like if you're singing it terribly, like it sucks. I don't care if you've prayed for it, right? It's still terrible. And in business, for you guys, what you're not saying like, yeah, we put God first and we just pray, and then we just kind of do a crappy job and hope, and He just He creates miracles for us, Like I know that's not true. Being able to be in a relationship and friendship with your dad for a long time. You talk about they're in Florida on vacation. I can remember years and years and years and years, meeting with him, having lunch, having coffee, being at a pub theology, and I mean his knee giving out. He's like, I haven't had a day off and whatever, like, you know what I mean? Yep. There was years of grinding and bringing your guys' absolute best. Like, this is not just pray and do a crappy job. There's excellence and hard work that has to be put into this too, correct?
That's correct. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, because we're trying to represent ourselves as a faith-based company, but not in our words, but by our actions, because they're not going to, the people that work for us, they need to know that we have their best interest. In this generation, it's so much harder to get people to buy into your company because there's so much skepticism in the world. And so for us, we had to work, especially now, we want to show them the why behind our business, why we do what we do and why we make these decisions. But you're not going to get there if you just sit on a tower and pull up numbers. I mean, you got to know your people. And so it's boots on the ground for us. I mean, we get in there and we're working beside these people, and we love them well. And sometimes loving them well is challenging them to be better than who they are. And that's the same that goes for our business. We've got to challenge our business to say, what can we do better? Because at the end of the day, this is all God's. That's how we believe it. And we're just here honoring it. And we can't do it if we're on, just sitting aside and just hoping that we're praying. I mean, it takes a lot of effort and work. And so, my parents, they were such an example of that. And my sister and I have, we've seen that, that second generation of just, we were there hanging the wood planks on the wall, when we were teenagers. And now we're on a whole nother level of 400 employees. And how do you, we're having that conversation daily, is how do you love them well? But you can't stop getting, you can't stop growing this company and showing that next generation that, hey, we are right here with you. We are going to work just as hard as you. And, sometimes it takes sacrifices. To this day, you think, we're sitting on top and we're just enjoying ourselves. I mean, I can just recall this week where I've had to stay an extra hour or two because I wanted to represent to my team that I'm willing to just fight as long as they are through these trenches and show them that I will do whatever it takes. If there's a toilet clogged, I'm the first one to grab the plunger because I want to show these people that I'm no better than them. We're all in this together. We call ourselves a pack. For the strength of the wolf is the pack. For the strength of the pack is the wolf. We're all in this together. We all have different hierarchies and stuff. But for really to get people to buy in, and to really get to buy in, not just in your business sense, but if you can get them to buy in and say, hey, I'm with a company that cares about me, that values me, that cherishes who I am, they're going to look for that next thing and says, well, what makes them different? And we want our actions to speak louder than our words. And so we can recite scripture all we want, but at the end of the day, we want them to follow, the way that we were led by Jesus Christ. And there's only a way that you can introduce those ideas to somebody is through your consistency in being that craft of business, being that consistency of character, and just having that love for those people. And we can turn people to Christ that way. I believe that. It's just, it's not just by reciting, it's by actually doing.
Yeah. There's no doubt and I think the thing there too is that if God's given you the privilege / responsibility of leading a business, right? I think it would be fair to say, it's not okay for Jesus to be like, hey, we're not going to do the work. We're just going to share Jesus. You know what I mean? Because there is a great blessing that is actually given to people to give them a job, to care for their families, right? To do what they need to do. And so I love that you guys are balancing that. It's like, we're not putting scripture over every wall. You know what I mean? We're not preaching before everything. We don't demand that our employees pray before every meal that they serve on the restaurant, right? You've not made it weird, but you're not hiding it because it is genuinely who you are as leaders, and as servant leaders, as you just talked about. And one of the things I think you guys, I was so stoked this year when you and your dad said, hey, listen, we care about our people and we want to do more to develop them, as individuals. We want them to be, to be the best leaders they can be. We want them to be the best, sons and daughters and husbands and wives and parents that they can be, as well as general managers. And so we got a chance to spend 6 weeks, with your guys' GM crew and take them through, the purpose paradigm developmental course that I've created. And man, it was so great, and in that, I didn't come in and, have an altar call after every session, right? Correct. It was about helping them understand, listen, you're created on purpose and for purpose, and we're going to help you discover that. And, the feedback that I got from you, some of the stories I heard from, some of the GMs, what I loved, Alec, was for them to be at work knowing that I work for a company that cares more about than just, can I get the job done? They care about the quality of my relationships. They actually want me to know what is unique and strong, and what are my motivators? What are the ways that I fit into the different ways of this team or my team at home? And to hear some of them say, they were applying these things already to how they were parenting or the conversations with their wife, and seeing, that you guys had the foresight to listen. We're going to take the time, away from them maybe being productive in the work, framework, to just be developed and let them know that we believe in them that way. And man, I can't say thanks enough for giving me that opportunity. And I can't wait to continue to dream with ideas with you and your dad, because I think there's some opportunities that we could expand that to more than just the GMs. But I just love that you guys have that kind of vision and that kind of value for your people. I mean, how important is that?
It is. And, it starts from the top, and when I say top, it's not us, it's God, and I believe that. And so, if we can follow his traits and what he's got designed for us, it comes to us. Yeah. And then if we can lead those well, and we can do really well, implementing those ideas and showing people that, what Christ has given to us, we can give to them. It goes to our GMs. Our GMs are going to take that and they're going to go into their stores and they're going to resemble that well into their stores, and their teams and their people. And I hope that our staff can do that for our guests, that we can get to that point where we're so far integrated as a culture that our servers, our dishwashers, our cooks are not just, acting on autopilot, just getting some income to get the next bill. It's that they're feeling that idea that they too can use what we've given them, that freedom of faith and responsibility, and put it into their practice of guests. And I've heard stories about that, where our team has taken that leap and doing a little bit more with their time. And we just want to help them on that journey to feel the confidence that Christ is, that godly confidence that Christ has in all of us. And so you're right. I mean, it's taking that intentional step, and the larger we get, we have to do that more often in different roles, because at the very bare minimum, when we were Noblesville, just Noblesville, it was us. We could talk to everybody, but as we get a little higher, it's like, we can't reach everybody, and nor can Jesus, and so he used his disciples, and that's why we feel like we're on this earth, is really just to play an impact in the people that are in our lives. And we again, it's not just by, our words, it's again by our actions. So, my parents are they're a huge example. They're a huge credit for all of this. I wish to some degree they should be on this call, but they're away, and they can celebrate the time that they've earned to get away. And I'm happy to have taken the responsibility to sit in the captain's chair while they're away and help out where I can.
Well, I'm stoked to have you on here, and I want to close by letting you speak to something that you're passionate about. And there was a quote that I'm stealing from a business leader that used to be here in town, and this was plastered all over the walls of his business. It said, "Businesses don't grow, people do." And their company was dedicated to developing people, and it was a faith-based perspective in that, behind the scenes, and that is true. I've seen that true time and time again, and I'm seeing you guys at Wolfies, continue to buy into that kind of philosophy. And as we were finishing up, our development journey with the GMs, you and I were able to sit down, and you kind of pulled the curtain back into something that you've been working on that's personal to you and a passion for you, that has the potential, I think, to transform the lives of a ton of people and see a lot of people developed. And if I'm saying it right, you're calling it the F5 or 5F, right?
5F, yep.
So this is about you. This has come out of your personal development, but this is something that you've got a vision to see how could this potentially really become a kind of flywheel of development in the business. And I think it's amazing I was so grateful you shared it with me, Alec. And if you would do us the honor and kind of take us through the understanding of F5 and or 5F, I keep saying it the wrong way, 5F, and where it came from and what you hope to see from it.
No, absolutely. 5F, F5, it's really the same thing, but when I designed it, it looked a lot cooler at 5F. And so you'll see that come down the pipeline. But essentially it's my parents did a great job. My dad, he introduced something called RIBS, which was Restaurant Industry Bible Study. We tried this thing. It was a way to take people further. we have a responsibility, and we want to get them to a place where they have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But in order to get there, we don't want to just bring them to church and say, all right, good luck, and walk away. It was,
Yep.
what else could we offer them and show them, you now are a little bit closer to seeing who we are and why we do what we do, and not just saying, hey, let's give it to the church and then walk away, because there's a lot of unanswered questions and confusion. And so we want to continue that dialogue. And so ribs was, something my dad started a while back, and we would fill the barn that I'm sitting in now with, 100 people, and we'd feed them and all these things. And out of his vision, I wanted to create something that I could too, that if I had a relationship with somebody and I got them to take that next step, what were the tools in my life? And it was just natural. I mean, it's what are the things that I lived by? And 5F was based on 5 principles, and that's your faith, your family, your finances, fitness, and freedom. And essentially each one just played a role in my day-to-day outlook on life, and just how could I be a better individual for the people around me? And so with my faith, I would pour into that, get the scripture, get the courage, that godly confidence I needed to go out in the world. Playing a role as a father of 4 daughters, those are the 4 people I want to disciple the most, those girls. And, that was always a place where I would pour into when I got home, and being intentional with, a wife that, she's been ragged, just running around chasing kids, and, we're homeschooling them and things on part-time. And I'd have to come home and really be in that mindset that I'm stepping into that environment.
Yeah.
And then you go to that finances and field, that's like your job. And stepping into your work, and not just, oh, I've had a really crummy day. It's rising above, it's climbing higher, and putting everything to the wayside and trying to see people where they are amongst all the distractions that can keep you from really pouring into people. And so it was such intentionality. And then you get to fitness, and just the fitness side is just that element of, you want to put yourself out there, and you got to feel good about who you are. And so there was an element of this. And the last one's freedom. We all have something we got to give up. Freedom is, it could be anything from addiction to, lust to, whatever might be in your world that you just want to separate yourself from. And these daily 5 practices were just put in a principle in my life that helped me get to be a better individual for everyone around me. And it was such intentionality that I would check off. And so I'm slowly developing this. I've got some people working on it, but again, it's a tool. Everyone can be creative, but it's the things that are naturally gifted to you. This was naturally something I wanted to develop for myself. And now it's a tool that I can actually go up to somebody that, hey, I'm so glad you joined me at church. What's your hope for the next chapter? And if they say, I don't know, I'm going to say, hey, here's something that worked for me. This has gotten me from point A to point B, and it's made me a better husband. It made me a better boss. It's made me a better follower of Christ, and it's made me just a better individual for myself. And so it was just something small, and it could fall flat on its face. I don't care, but I think God's got a plan. And I've seen the things that my parents have thrown out there, and pub theology, and most recent worship on the water. I mean, I don't know if we touched on that this time, but what a cool opportunity where they built these businesses up strong enough where beer gardens where people are partying the night before, restaurants prior would have, crazy events out there. We've now turned into a place of worship where we can bring people in. Hundreds of people gather, you lead it, and it's a great opportunity that wouldn't be here if we didn't just serve people well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you said that maybe your parents should have been on here, but I'm telling you, man, the day we had that conversation, about 5F, I was like, I want to talk to Alec about this. I want to get him on the podcast. And when we had this idea to have this kind of mission and business, mixture, I wanted the podcast community to hear about this and be inspired by it, because I think it's world class, Alec. And the reason I think it is because it's another example of you saying, okay, the mission of Christ is the foundation. It's everything, right? It all filters through that. Now we have to run a business with excellence. We've got to show up. We've got to grind. We've got to do these things. But this is why God is giving us the favor. This is why God is giving us the blessing. So what does that look like? And I love that you're getting creative with it. It doesn't mean, okay, well, that means that I quote scripture and I invite people to church. It's like, well, that's cool, but the Great Commission, last time I checked, right, Jesus didn't say, therefore, go into all of your relationships, invite people to church, and then leave them there. Right? Which is in most Christian circles, that's what we think. It's like, I got to live a good life and then invite somebody to church. And if I get them to go to church, then I've done my job. Well, I'm really passionate about this. Is the Great Commission, which was given to all people, not just like special people, like people that run restaurants, people that run banks, people that are baristas, people that are drummers, people that are podcast hosts. Like everybody gets the same mission, right? Go into the whole world, which be any sphere of your life, and make disciples. Like you make a disciple, teaching them, right, everything that Jesus taught you to obey, and then baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And Jesus says, "Here's the cool part: I'm going to be with you and help you do this your whole life." And what I love with the vision you have for Alec is like, once again, my guess is in our conversation, if somebody would be a part of a 5F situation, you're not going to be like, hey, you can only be a part of the group if you've already gotten baptized, right? Or you can only be a part of the group if you believe everything that I believe, and you have to pass this quiz on like biblical literacy. Like, no, you're going to pour your life into people, and guess what? That is discipleship. If they decide to follow Jesus at some point, that's on them, but you're helping them step into this is what a life that Jesus would help you create would look like. And you don't have to beat them over the head with that, but you're creating an engine and a repeatable, replicable, engine within the business and within your life to fulfill the Great Commission, which, dude, I'm so stoked that you've put this together. When you showed it to me, I think it's got tons of legs, and I think there could be a ton of people are, in different industries around the country that would go, okay, let me just get creative and say, God, use my imagination. Here's what I have. Here's the business I have. Here's the gifts and abilities I have. How could I get creative in making disciples that make disciples? And I think God's looking for leaders like you, Alec, that will open the opportunity for him to give them great ideas. I think you've got one, and just like your parents have done, you're following in their footsteps to bring courage and risk to step into that. And man, I can't wait to see where it goes. And if I can help you out in the process, let me know, because I'd love to run shotgun and seeing some of that happen, brother.
I would love that. Yeah. Any advice, or, I'm still in the early stages, like I said, but, I would love to see your resource pool at some point in time.
No doubt.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the help.
Well, Alec, thank you so much for being the first guest on the At Home podcast series.
Yeah.
I need to get over there to Wolfie's soon and give me some more of those smokehouse pork nachos. Those things are heavenly.
We'll get you covered. Yeah, no, this has been great. I really do appreciate you inviting me on, and you've had many conversations with my parents, and so it's been a real privilege getting to know you more, and just seeing how you lead your family and stuff. It's been wonderful.
I appreciate it. Well, hey, we'll be back with another episode next week. Don't miss it. Until that time, never forget, God is for you. He's not against you. He is near you, not far away, and he's created you on purpose and for purpose. Thanks for downloading and watching this episode of the Daron Early Wine Podcast.